1955 to 1975, an event that changed Vietnam occurred, the Vietnam War. The U.S. took advantage of the inventory. One of the main weapons the U.S. used was Agent Orange. Agent Orange was a defoliating weapon that the Americans used to clear forests for open land combat. Agent Orange affected most of the southern part of Vietnam. The local villages had serious health effects, including 5 illnesses: soft tissue sarcoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, including hairy cell leukemia, Hodgkin's disease, and chloracne. This also had a huge effect in the mangrove ecosystem. 306,280 acres of mangrove forest was sprayed at least once by Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. This made up 40% of the South Vietnamese mangrove ecosystem. The wood from mangrove trees is used for pulp, wood chips, and charcoal. The wood is extremely valuable because it is resistant to rock and insects. The pulp from the mangrove trees can be turned into paper, and the wood chips along with the charcoal can be burned for electricity. Mangroves have been useful and helpful to the locals that live around this ecosystem. But what are the ecosystems like right now?
The trees in this ecosystem have a special adaptation that other trees don't have. The soil in this ecosystem is very low on oxygen because of its salinity. All trees must have oxygen to survive. Since the soil is very low on oxygen, they also have to get the oxygen from the atmosphere. Did you know mangrove trees grow roots above the surface of the soil as one of their adaptations? Those roots are called pneumatophores. The pneumatophores absorb the oxygen from the air. That is how they are capable of living in low oxygen soil. In the mangroves, there are lots of symbiosis relationships between many organisms. There is mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. With mutualism, both organisms benefit from each other. One example is where the cattle egret eats all of the parasites on the cow's body. The cow benefits as it will not get its blood taken, and the cattle egret benefits as it gets food. On the other hand, there is parasitism. The symbiosis relationship appears when one organism benefits by harming another organism. Parasites harm the cow by taking blood from them, harming the cow while they benefit. Commensalism is when one organism benefits, but the other is not affected. This can be shown between an oyster and a mangrove pneumatophore. The oysters will have a solid base to live, but they don't harm nor benefit the mangrove pneumatophore. The most commonly seen organism is usually red-clawed crabs. The red-clawed crab is an omnivore as it consumes both plants and other animals. They live in brackish water, which is the half salt water and half fresh water. They get defensive and raise their claws when they see other fish and crabs. This is the crab's behavioral adaptation, meaning that it is what the organism does to survive in its environment.
Humans are replanting grown seedlings of the mangrove trees in Cang Yet to try and restore the ecosystems. The mangrove trees then conduct photosynthesis and replace the carbon dioxide with oxygen, which cleans air pollution, hence the name lungs of the city.
But TK, how are humans attempting to restore the mangrove ecosystems in other countries? And how much money are they spending yearly on restoring mangrove ecosystems? Also, are there any major organizations purely focusing on restoring mangrove ecosystems? What are they?
In other countries, such as Malaysia and Sweden, humans spend up to $216,000 on restoring the mangrove ecosystem. There are 3 types of restoring ecosystem. The first type, planting only, although inexpensive, for example, $100 to $200 per hectare, usually does not succeed due to a failure to appreciate the psychological tolerances of mangroves to tidal inundation. Even if it works, the result is often replacement of one productive marine habitat, like seagrass meadows with mangroves, a questionable trade-off. The second type, hydraulic restoration, can be done for similar costs and with proper planning has a high success rate. Successful restoration of abandoned shrimp aquaculture ponds is an example of this method. Planting should only be done if natural recolonization fails and can double the cost of a project. Scientific data indicates that using this method, ecological functions are quickly restored, with fish populations typically reaching reference site diversity and densities within 5 years. The third type, excavation and fill, is the most expensive due to the high cost of large-scale earth moving. The process involves moving earth from one place to another. It is only a viable option in more developed countries and may not be a cost-effective means of restoration except under limited circumstances.
First, overharvesting is a major issue for mangrove ecosystems. People are cutting down too many trees as they need the materials for building houses as there is overpopulation. They also need firewood, pulp, and charcoal only for the privileges of humans. Second, the Vietnam War has affected the ecosystem due to Agent Orange. It undermined the ecosystem and the locals. Third, the rising temperature has no effect on the trees because the trees have time to adapt. On the other hand, the rising sea levels do have an effect on the trees because they cover the roots. The tree takes a longer time to grow the roots than it does to seed to cover them up.
It is actually possible to restore the mangroves to be similar to what they used to be before. There are a number of restoration projects that are happening worldwide. The intensity of aquaculture has leveled in some countries. Aquaculture does affect mangroves because they clear off some trees for the land. Mangroves will be useful to the locals in various ways. Therefore, it is important to restore the ecosystem.